Guys, welcome to the Vlad Catcher Show, the #1 show for founders, execs, and entrepreneurs who are scaling their businesses. This video is presented to you by Snyk, and we have an incredible interview for you today with its CEO, Peter McKay, about how he is building and scaling the business. Peter, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Vlad.
Well, let's just kind of start with what is Snyk and how does it help tech companies?
Yeah, Snyk has been around for 10 years, focused on what we call developer security or embedding security throughout the software development lifecycle. So allowing developers to develop incredibly fast, but do it in a secure way. So this concept of shift left or moving security earlier and earlier in the software development lifecycle to allow the security teams to build very secure applications and allow security teams to make sure that they are reducing the risk associated with the applications that developers are building.
And who's usually the buyer of Snyk, Peter? Is it the developer? Like, who's the champion that pushes the company and organization?
Yeah, the buyer of Snyk has evolved over the years. When we started, it was very much a PLG, bottoms-up developer adoption. Nobody ever thought early on that developers would care about security or that you could ever do a PLG motion for security. But that's this maniacal focus on that developer experience, developer try, buy, and that's how we started. Very viral within the developers. And for 3-4 years, it was purely a developer sale. And then we recognized over time that increasingly the budgets were coming through security. And it's like, and that's when I started, over 6 years ago. And we said, well, maybe we should start talking to security people. And we started this top-down motion of, hey, look at security. Your developers are already using us to build secure code. Maybe we should talk about how we bring that together. And so that's how we added a security component with our developers. So today, a lot more of the dollars associated with the AI security and developer security is from security budgets.
And what works for you guys to acquire customers, Peter?
Our customer acquisition, again, has really evolved over the years from the bottoms-up PLG motion that we started with to now of a top-down expansion. And we focus on companies who are really modern AI cloud-native applications. So people who are building agents or new agentic applications that rely on developers and empower developers to build applications quickly. More developers you have, the better fit it is for Snyk. And so that's how we target companies that are the most aggressive in their AI development, their application development, and that also care that they're doing it in a secure way. And we bring those two together.
And because you guys did something interesting, you've successfully, they brought you on, a great CEO to run and scale the business, but many companies stumble, right? They can't actually go from founder-led to the CEO. So from your experience, what's the key towards whenever the businesses go from founder-led companies to a professional CEO?
Yeah, the founder-led transition to CEO is we could probably talk for hours just on that one topic, right? Because I've done this 3 times. I've joined from a technical founder, and I've come in really to complement. And I mean, we had really good founders. We had 3 really good founders that had built the business, much more technical, and they needed kind of the go-to-market and kind of all the pieces to bring it together and really scale it. And so for me, I looked for an opportunity where I could complement the existing, founding team and work well. And we're very much aligned on the culture. It's kind of like when you're parents and you have to agree on how you want to raise your kids and, what's the right thing. And so very early, we wanted to make sure we were aligned on what I view a good culture is with the way they viewed the culture, and that we were going to grow a transformational, generational company together. And once we aligned on that, we worked out really well. I mean, it was again, I look for opportunities where I could complement an existing team and scale. And I give the founders a lot of credit. A lot of founders, the egos get in the way, and it makes it hard for me to transition that and give up control. And I think what was important for us and why it was so successful is everybody had to give up a little on their ego, right? The founder had to give up some of the control, and visibility and decision making to someone coming in. But I also knew that the founder wanted to be the face of the company and still go out and be the pitch person and kind of drive a lot of the external brand. And so I think everybody, if you're kind of willing to kind of sacrifice a little bit and don't let the egos get in the way, and both of you do, the teams do what's right for the business, then it can work out really effectively. And I don't think we would be where we are today if we didn't work really well together for 6 years. I think everybody came out better for it.
What would you say are some of your, big hiring lessons? Because hiring is always so challenging, especially when you're growing quickly, right? There's so many roles. What is your hiring philosophy?
Yeah, hiring is really a challenge. It hasn't gotten easier with time, because, especially with, Chat GPT and all the tools, what do you believe in a resume? What do you believe in notes and that you get? But I've always tried to spend the time. Like, I think sometimes people rush through a process. I would never hire anybody until at executive level I met, 5 or 6 times in different environments, socially and professionally. Backdoor references, critical. Make sure you can talk to people you trust that know the person you're trying to hire. You just minimize the mistakes. It's really hard. And I tried to find these people who, I could grow with for 5 years and be part of this journey. And it's hard to get when you're growing as a company, 5 years, who knows where you're going to be in 5 years. And so, get someone with that 2-3 year, I can see them being able to be on that journey and drive us to that next level. And make sure that we get people who, have the success, but also good cultural fit. And you still, even with all of that, you still make mistakes at times. I've made my fair share of mistakes. And it depends on whether you're hiring a CMO or a CRO or an engineering leader. It's all a very different process, but, take the time, do your work, do your homework, validated backdoor references. It just minimize the risk of it being a bad decision.
Do you guys have sales reps, Peter?
We have over 100 of them, yes.
Any advice on hiring great enterprise sales reps?
I would say the advice I would give in hiring enterprise sales reps is I would definitely network, backdoor reference people, because you get a lot of people who say, just by nature of them being good salespeople, they can sell themselves really well. And so I think, you got to discount some of the things that they say and validate it through as many people as you can. If they're a good enterprise salesperson, then you probably are one removed from 10 people who probably know that salesperson. Validate is what I would suggest. And make sure you get not only the good person who's a good salesperson, but a good culture fit as well. Because sometimes really good salespeople don't make always a good culture fit. And we've all been on teams with incredible athletes, but bad teammates. And so really good sales reps, everybody looks up to, and you want to make sure that those reps are the right culture fit for you as well, especially early days of a company.
How about sales leaders, Peter? Like, what would you look for if you were hiring a VP of sales?
It really depends on the phase that you're in. VP of sales in an earlier stage, you look for someone who's been through the startup, the scrappiness of a startup, but also has some scale that knows what good looks like. And having that combination is a good fit in the early days. It's kind of going from a scrappy, 0 to $1 million to $2 million to $3 million. But also, once you get to that 2 million and 3 million, they understand what it takes to get to 10 or to 20. And so you find these athletes, these leaders that want to come in and know how to recruit and really get the most out of the sales teams that they're bringing together. and that can scale. So as you get bigger and you become the manager of managers and in multiple layers, it's what is the right hiring process? Do we have all the right skills to scale from 400 million to a billion? That's what we would be looking for. So depending on where you are in the journey, get the person who's been through the next couple of stages, and that's the fit we typically look for along the way.
And I have one more question regarding the CEO role, which is, if you're a CEO of a tech company, what do you think? Do you think it's okay if the CEO is not technical? That way the CEO kind of, can inspire, can recruit, and do a lot of other jobs, but the CEO does not know how to code, right? Like, can't ship code himself. What are your thoughts about this case?
Yeah, well, I'm an example of one of those CEOs. I didn't come out of a technology side. I mean, I started my career as an accountant, and then I got into sales, and I grew up through sales and marketing and through go-to-market. And so I have acquired a lot of understanding of technology over the years because I'm a curious CEO. I'm conscious. I'm always learning on how technology works, how the benefits, how technology can be used to solve business problems. And I tend to be the person who really understands the business and can bring that to the technologist to translate. And so having enough knowledge and appreciation of the technology, but having a really good depth and understanding of the business challenges we're trying to solve. And I tend to be the bridge between the two. So I think you don't have to come out of engineering or product to be a CEO, but you have to be curious, you have to appreciate, and you have to constantly be learning on enough of the technology to be able to translate tech to business problem solving. And that's what I think I brought to a lot of the founders who may love the tech, but great technology without solving a business problem is, a boat floating in the water. So the ability to bring those two together is the critical void that I've tried to fill in my career. And I think a lot of other people who come out of different backgrounds, doesn't mean just because you come out of finance doesn't mean you can't be a CEO, but you just have to have a always be learning mindset and incredible curiosity, because otherwise, it'll be a challenge.
I have a question about culture, Peter. Because so many companies, talk about their company culture, how they have this amazing company culture. What can businesses and tech companies do to actually build a great company culture? And what does that even mean, too?
Yeah.
So that we can clarify, what does a great company culture even mean?
Yeah, it's evolved over the years. I think, or at least maybe it's just my thinking of culture evolves. Culture is kind of a set of rules or principles that a company follows that are kind of these guiding principles that we wanna all follow together as a company. And these are things like one team, care deeply. These are things that we've done around at Snyk, and we built out. They were around well before I got here, and I appreciated the importance of kind of our 4 core values that we've had. Now, they haven't stayed the same. They evolve as you go from different stages, and you add hundreds more people. I always tell people that we bring on board, it's like, it's not just the CEO who owns culture. Everybody owns culture. Everybody you hire is going to come in and either enhance your culture or detract from your culture. And most people who come to Snyk come here because they like the culture and they like the people. And so it's on them to own it. Meaning, if somebody is doing something that is countercultural, it's up to you and everybody here to make sure we fix it. And we make sure that people understand that that's not how we do things. We genuinely care about each other. We're customer centric. We do things customer first, Snyk second, individual third, in that order of decisioning. And so we embed this into the thinking of of everybody. And so when you have to make a decision and nobody's around and you have to make it quick, you think, what are the core values of the company, and do the right thing. And that's an important part. People think it was the culture is what it starts with, but it isn't. It evolves as you grow. When you're a 1,000, 2,000 person company, it's different than when you were a 10 or 20 person company. But there's some core premises that stays with you. And I think if we had, our 4 core values, 2 of them have been with us over the years, and the other 2 have been kind of interpreted differently as we got bigger and started to scale over the years.
That's interesting, Peter. You're mentioning customer first, then the business, then the person.
Yes.
Right?
You always get in trouble when you try to make a decision. Me first, then the company, and then the customer last. That's how you that's how you will not survive at Snyk.
And I have kind of relevant questions on this. Do you talk to customers, or do you try to, talk to customers to understand their needs more, or are you a CEO who kind of leads more without talking to customers? And kind of relevant, next part to this is, how do you approach competition, Peter? Like, do you think about competition? Do you keep track of it, or do you mostly focus on leading just the company forward without worrying competitors?
Yeah, I'm definitely a CEO that likes to talk to customers. So it's a big part of my job every day is talking to customers. I probably talk to, 20 customers a week at least. And it's the big unlock, right? Really, as a CEO, I think it's really hard to do the job when you don't have a direct line of connection to your customers, and in validating what you're hearing, and kind of flushing out our vision. Like, this is what we think, but is this in line with the way you think of things? And so for me, understanding, we drinking our own Kool-Aid, and we think it's this way, and we find out it's very different than what our customers are trying to address. And so I think what I've tried to do is like my own customer board of directors. I have these customers that I go to on a regular basis every month, and I just talk to them about this particular situation, or what do you think about this, or should we be building security right into the IDE, or should we do this? Should we do this? It's just this really good constant validation. And I've always said the big unlock for CEOs is you got to be a good listener. You got to ask really good questions, and you got to shut up and listen. And you take that information and you bring it in, and now you have credibility internally when people come to you and say, I want to do this or this. It's like, I don't think that's what our customers are really trying to solve. So I think it's important at all levels, in all parts of the organization, to stay connected to the customers. In terms of competitive, only the paranoid survive. You are worried about everybody. We've got developer tools that are coming in that are really good for developer experience, but not strong in security. I've got security tools that are really good for security people, but not good for developers. And so, I worry about these people, and a million startups getting funded every day coming in. I worry about them too. I worry about big guys that are coming in that could encroach on my space. It's like, if you're not in a big TAM, you wouldn't have any competition. If you have a large total addressable market in front of you, you're absolutely going to have competition. Competition makes you better. I've got to be better than the developer experience from developer tools. I've got to be better for security for these security tools that are built for security people. It's just a great way to push us in areas far more aggressively. It's like anything, when you're competing with somebody or competing against someone, they push you, they make you better. And so that's the way we view our competition. We absolutely watch them, but we still are on our vision and on our path. So I think it's important to pay attention, but don't over-rotate one way or the other.
It's interesting. But that's important that, you mentioned you talk to customers, you really listen to customers, because I think nowadays many founders and CEOs, they try to skip that part and just build.
Yes. And there's a lot of companies out there that are build, baby, build. And, then they have this amazing technology with no problem to solve, right? That's the history of venture capital, right? There's the thousands of companies that are out there looking for a problem to solve with great technology. It's the reverse. Find the big problem and build software technology to solve that business problem. And that business problem evolves over the years. Developer security when we started is now AI security today. And if we just stayed where we were, it was a huge market opportunity that we would have missed if we didn't, evolve as we went. And you evolve from conversations with customers along the way.
Peter, I'd like to ask one more thing about the CEO role, because I think many times founders and executives, they don't realize how challenging the CEO role is. Like how much work and how stressful and how challenging that role is. And I'd like to ask you, what were some kind of tough decisions you had to make at Snyk?
Yeah, I think by far and away the hardest decision is the people side, right? I think it's a hard, I think a lot of the challenges I think founders have is, you have this amazing founding team, and you grow, and you're in the battle together, and you build this tight-knit team. But as you grow, skill sets change and requirements change, and roles need to get narrower and narrower as you scale. And some people want to be on that journey, and some people are like, look, I like the startup. I like the sub $10 million, and it's like, some people opt out and some people don't, where you have to have these conversations with them and about, like, this is the end of the road here for you, because I need to get someone in that can scale to the next level. And having these people conversations proactively, and people say, as a CEO, you need to be able to see around corners. You got to be able to see ahead of time, 6-9 months ahead, when you think an executive isn't going to make it around the corner. And it's a lot of it has to do with their ability to hire amazing people, right? Everybody, I had this conversation internally, like, well, we're all going to have our day. And it's like, well, no, that's not necessarily true. Your ability to scale from 10 million to a billion is your ability to hire amazing people far, far better than you are, that have done the scale that we're about to do. And when you see people struggling to hire those people, that's usually the telltale sign that it's time to have that conversation with an executive. So it really comes down to staying ahead of the hiring and hiring people who are, stages well ahead of where we are, and to be able to grow seamlessly. And so you continuously grow by injecting that skill set from the people who've done 500 to a billion with people who have done, 100 million to 400 million. And so it's that ability to hire and recruit amazing people so you can scale is what I think is a big part of when you have to step off the journey or when you keep going. And so for me, the hardest part is knowing ahead of time, before they understand that they're not scaling and anybody around them recognizes they're not scaling. You have to have those conversations proactively as much as you can. And it's not easy to do. It is the worst part of the job. And anybody ever says it is not the worst part of the job, they have no heart. And that's it wouldn't be a great culture. And so for us, we take those things, those are part of the journey, but you have to do it the right way and as proactively as you can.
Peter, but that means the key to scaling a business is to hire great leaders who can hire great team members?
Constantly.
Wow.
It is it is the telltale sign when a leader cannot hire great people, right? And when the teams, because if you're scaling a business, right, you can hire a really good CRO and they have an amazing sales team, right? But if your marketing team isn't keeping up or your product is falling behind, then it's kind of a waste, right? And so the goal is to keep all the different groups scaling at the same rate. And so when I always say, don't be the reason we can't go fast. Don't be the slowest part of the train here. And so because it's not fair to the other teams that are trying to go fast when, because you can't hire really good, amazing people and stay up, run as fast as we're running, then, that usually is the sign. And it becomes obvious. It's not always that, hard to figure out, but the key to a CEO is you get all the groups have to be going at the same. If you have one group that's taken off and the other groups are way behind, that's not scaling. Scaling is your product, your R&D is growing, your marketing is keeping up, your sales teams are keeping up, your finance, your legal, everybody is kind of growing at the same pace. That's the job of a CEO.
How many direct reports do you have, Peter?
I've gone through different phases, and there are times when the market slows down and you have to pivot, you get flatter in terms of your org structure, and then as you kind of scale, I kind of get a little bit more structure. So I've had anywhere between 8 to 14 direct reports. I think the right number for a CEO is somewhere around that 8 to 10 is probably the right amount. And again, it changes with time. I've been down to 7 and I've been as high as 14. So it really depends on what stage you're in. I think when you hit tougher times, I tend to get flatter. When you're growing, I tend to get narrower. And that's worked for me over my career.
Since hiring such a, huge part of a CEO, such a huge part of a company's success, and you've hired so many people, right? So many great people for your team, for your company. What can we do to interview candidates properly, right? To actually interview candidates in a good way so we can get the best talent.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it changes with the phases you've gone through, and I think at Snyk we've been through a good 3 or 4 different phases. First was just getting good athletes that could come in and do a number of different roles, and just everybody pitched in and really scrappy, and then you started to scale, and everybody's like culture, and then you make the mistake of hiring really good culture fits, but not maybe as much of the experience and the excellence that you needed at a time. And so for me, we spend a great deal of time making sure we hire the right people. And so we've really evolved the hiring process. We have a culture person. We have a lot of work that we do on just recommendations and referrals, and making sure we get reference checks along the way. We have a lot of good things. The R&D team has a really intense process that we go through, to give them problems to solve, because it's kind of like a teacher in school. People can, with ChatGPT, it changes the dynamic. And so you really have to flush out in front of with a lot of communication face to face. Are they what they say they are? And so if you think of, all the processes that are critical in a company, the number one process to get right is the hiring process, right? Where, what's the right job description? What are the right profiles and the personas that you think are the right fit for them? Especially now in an AI era where it's kind of gone full circle now for a lot of companies, because AI is back to being a startup again. So now we're hiring people who are, again, scrappy, curious, focus on, can do a lot of different jobs, a learner, people who are flexible and adaptive to changes in the market because it's changing so quickly. That's a very different profile than it was 2 years ago. And so I think it's never the same. It evolves with, changes in the market. It changes with the stage you're in. It changes with technology and how it evolves, especially in the AI era. So there's a lot of dynamics, but the number one thing I would say is constant maniacal focus on the recruitment process, the hiring process. And if there's one thing that you need to get right, especially when you're growing really fast, is don't lower the bar. Constantly raise the bar on hiring. the biggest, and we've made a mistake here too. You kind of get a little bit lazy, you're going really fast and you cut corners and, the bar kind of dropped. It's like, no, once that gets lowered, it's hard, you gotta really pick it up. And it's just, I would say to all CEOs, the number one, maniacal focus, get the right recruitment hiring process nailed with people you trust that'll hire the right people, not just culture. Culture is important, but performance. Any culture that isn't based on performance first is not a good culture either. So it starts with performance, then it's culture. So you got to get it in the right order, not the other way around.
Yeah. Peter, how do we do proper like reference checks, right? Because it's actually not as easy because you hire many executives. Like, how do you actually call, that whoever the reference person was and get some value out of that person about your potential leader you're looking to hire?
I think that it's the value of a network. It's you really have to use your network, whether it's connections to people via LinkedIn, where you have someone who's connected to that person. It just takes work. It's talking to the investors. Hey, do you know this person? Do you know someone who knows someone from this company that can give us a reference check? It's just a little bit, everybody's trying to go so fast and hire this person because I need them right away. It's like, okay, I got it. But, well, they gave me 3 references. Well, don't necessarily trust the ones that they give you. Where did you get a reference of someone you didn't get from them, right? Where's the backdoor references? And especially early stage, when one hire makes such a big difference, validate, and not just culture fit, but performance, scale. Are they what you need to go to the next level? It's, salespeople, are they shoe salesmen or are they relationship people? Because if you got too much of one and not enough of the other, it's bad. So you try to get, a good balance, and to get that right, I think you've got to talk to their prior managers or coworkers or people like that, and that extra step makes massive dividends in the success of your hiring practices overall.
Well, Peter, I'm so grateful you came on the show and shared many of your really interesting lessons. I don't think my whole life I'll ever forget how you mentioned that the reason many businesses can't scale is because the leaders were not able to hire the right team members. That's like an amazing quote, Peter. Really, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to our viewers before we log off?
No, I think this is great. It got me to think about, seldom do you take the time to kind of think about, some of the questions you ask, which are really good. I think, I guess the only thing I would leave is, I think one of the pieces that I've been able to acquire over the years, which is not easy, hasn't been easy, is to take feedback. A lot of people, I remember when I came here, the founder was really good at giving me feedback. Well, you're not doing this, or you could do this better, or you could do this better. And I realized that if I got defensive on every piece of feedback that I was getting, then people will stop giving me feedback. Because if he gave me 5 pieces of feedback, one of them was a gem. Like, holy cow, that was incredible. It made me so much better. But if I argued with any one of them, I wouldn't have gotten the gem. So my feedback to not only just CEOs or founders, don't be defensive, don't be insecure, be open to feedback, take it in. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to respond to it. Take it in. Be open to it, because somewhere in that batch of feedback, there's going to be 1 or 2 things that are going to be really valuable and make you far better as a leader and make your company better. But if you're not open, you're not getting any of that. And it's a huge unlock for people if they just lower the defenses, be more secure, be stronger with yourself, your confidence, and get the feedback, weed through it, get the one you think is the gem and use it, because it'll make you better as a leader and a CEO or whatever your career aspirations are.
Well, Peter, I'm so grateful you came on the show and shared the Snyk journey.
It was great to be here. Thanks, Vlad.